Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today's guest is super cool, and I am so excited to have him on board my podcast today to share his wisdom with you all. My guest started his first business in grade 9 and is the owner of the clothing brand Anarchy Label. His mission is to build a creative empire that empowers the community to take charge of their life, whilst also providing the space and resources to assist in their journey. So with that said, I would love to welcome Jack Williams.
How you doing, Liz?
I am amazing. How are you today?
Splendid.
Absolutely,
yeah. I'm excited for this one. I'm gobsmacked by this view today. We're very, very relaxed here on this Friday afternoon.
Yes, I can agree with you there. Jack actually has me at his house today. We're recording from, and we're just sitting on the deck with the canals and the sun's going down. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, definitely is. I'm excited for this one.
Cool. So with all my guests, Jack, what I do is I start with 2 questions. So the first question is, what is something that you are grateful for this week?
This week? That's funny because we've been doing lots of gratitude recently, and I'm finding it extremely difficult to narrow down just a few things because I suppose it's a great problem to have, but I feel like I'm grateful for the major lifestyle shifts that have happened literally in like the last 6 months, and I'm definitely seeing like the fruits of that labor come to fruition now. Definitely very grateful for the Brotherhood Tribe. I'm sure you'll probably, if not already, hear a lot about it through this podcast. So yeah, I'm grateful for the community around me.
Beautiful. And what has been something you have learnt this week?
Something I've learnt this week. So this comes kind of from like in internal dealing. And one thing that I've learnt, because I'm day 20 something of 75 hard at the moment. And one thing that I've learnt is that I work really well with the structure of a challenge, because I'll admit, my ego doesn't allow me to back down from challenges. So one thing that I've found through 75 Hard is that my entire life has kind of gotten a lot more purposeful and like, what's the word? Yeah, I say on purpose, basically how I'm spending my time. So what I've done is, because one thing that I've found that I've been avoiding in my businesses is being in the trenches running Facebook ads, basically, which is ironic because they're one of the things that earn you money in an online business, right? So I've built out like a sequence of challenges for myself to keep me accountable and on track with running Facebook ads. And I've been, 10 or so days into that, and I can already feel that my habits and my kind of limiting beliefs towards running Facebook ads are starting to diminish.
Yeah, amazing. And so with that said, going into with your introduction on Anarchy the label, you started a business in grade 9 and grade 10 you did Anarchy. Tell me a little bit about that. So for those that are listening who don't know who you are and what you're about and your story, and that you have your own podcast as well, how did you get from that moment when you started your own business to where you are now running those Facebook ads and going into a bit more structure with your business?
I couldn't pinpoint exactly where this mentality of mine came from, but from as probably younger than grade 9, I was getting my friends from school, and we'd go door knocking to do like landscaping works, and this is from early or late junior school into early high school, just, I don't know, my brain was constantly looking for opportunities that would turn into kind of, I suppose, business opportunities. Like I used to print flyers and put them around the neighborhood for any kind of work I could possibly do. But I never had the inkling to go to like a business and say, hey, you know, I want to offer my time for money, because I get so passionate about putting together like a team of people. And one thing that I did find is like, I felt so good being able to provide work for like my friends. So like getting that taste of that opportunity like early in life, I was like, oh, yeah, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, even though it was like quite trivial things like gardening and all that kind of stuff, it just felt amazing to be able to offer that to my peers, you know, and we'd all work together and like have lots of fun. And at the end of the day, like I got to pay them money like that I'd gotten from the adults. And that was just like, that whole experience for me was like, yeah, no, business is my thing. So I've never actually had a job where I've worked for someone else. I've always just kind of like made it work, and it hasn't been pretty at times. I'm sure we'll get into the ups and downs, but the one thing is that I'm extremely proud of is I've always been able to make it work out of my own resourcefulness, basically. So in grade 9, I actually started Anarchy as a marketing agency. So quite early, I was doing like graphic design and running like some very simple Facebook ads to all you Gold Coasters here. You'll probably know the clubs, The Bedroom and Sin City. So yeah, through a connection, I ended up getting in and doing all that kind of stuff. That was an interesting experience because I was like young. I used to wear suits to every fucking meeting.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It was cool, but I was like so young.
Yeah, how old were you?
I don't know. How old are you in 19 in Queensland? I mean, how old are you in grade 9 or so? And towards the end of grade 9, like 15 or so?
Wow.
I think, yeah. So I always used to wear like suits. It was so funny, actually. And then, well, I remember distinctly the first time I ever went into like the head office for Bedroom, and because Bedroom and Sin City are owned by the same like company, and it was the most kind of stereotypical nightclub owner office. Like, here's a 65-year-old dude with a 24-year-old wife that drove, like, I won't give his name, but some of you might know him, 24-year-old blonde wife that drives a pink Ferrari. And I go into his office and it's like wall-to-wall glass looking down at Surfers Paradise. Just like expensive bottles of Patron all around like the windowsill, and just like cigars, and I'm like, you're such a fucking cliche, man. But anyway, that was like a cool experience for me, because one thing that I found early on is like I definitely know that they were trying to take advantage of me being young, but because I was very confident in my skills, and because I had kind of good guidance through my girlfriend at the time, her dad was a great influence of mine. I was able to kind of hold my own and learn those like business interactions and all the subconscious communication that goes on in those type of situations quite early. You know, because there were times as well where I got taken advantage of and ended up doing lots of work, you know, for not that much money or wasting heaps of time. And I'm sure like you've been through all that yourself as well. So I did that for a while, and then I got a little bit sick of working with adults. I was like, oh, you know, I'm always a young kid interacting with adults. So I, you know, decided I'll use my art and I'll put it on a product that I can sell to my friends, like t-shirts and stuff like that. And then it wasn't too long after I got really sick of the quality of t-shirts that you could buy just wholesale. So I was like, oh, how hard could it be to manufacture our own stuff? And then this is a very valuable piece of advice, guys. Don't say you can't do something until you've at least Googled it once, because you'll probably find the answer the first Google. So yeah, literally just Googled how to manufacture clothing, and yeah, started on that process. It was about a year from that point that I had my first like self-manufactured collection, and yeah, it just the journey goes on, and we've kind of grown exponentially since then in my knowledge and my skill and just like general, you know, approach to life.
Wow, incredible. That's so cool. And Anarchy, the name Anarchy, like what, I guess, drew you to that name?
Well, for anyone who isn't familiar with what Anarchy is, basically, and at the moment with what's going on, it's been given like this horrible connotation and been negatively pushed in the press. So Anarchy is just life or like society operating without governance, without a governing body. And unfortunately, the media loves to spin that in a way of like, oh, it's violent, you know, it's hatred, it's, you know, destruction and all that kind of stuff. But if you think about it, in my personal opinion, I see that not as anarchy, but almost as like a failed anarchy. You know, what anarchy really is society operating under, you know, love and cooperation and all that kind of stuff. Because for society to operate without governance, we have to cooperate, you know, otherwise it's just chaos, basically. So I've always loved the idea of, well, I suppose, like a lot of people, I had difficulties with being told what to do. I avoid being disrespectful and all that kind of stuff, but I'm like, yeah, I hear your opinion. I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. And that's just kind of like always been the case. Not sure where that's come from, but I know it's definitely helped me in business. Probably a big reason why I've been so hell-bent on like being self-employed my entire life as well. So yeah, anarchy is just the perfect depiction of my personality, you know? So yeah, that's a pretty accurate answer, I'd say.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And I remember you saying that earlier about like the importance of like not following the crowd and like going ahead and doing your own thing as well. And so especially like with your own brand so young and then coming out of high school, and you mentioned like ups and downs and things like that. Like with that, how did you cope with, I guess, having that in school and then also with the people around you? Like, were they supporting you? Did you find that they were supporting you through that growth in your business, or?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like, it was cool. Like, the thing about me is, like, I kind of talk about it a lot in my podcast as well. Like, I have always been my own best friend. So I never really I don't have anything saved in my memory bank where, you know, people haven't been unsupportive or like have been unsupportive or anything like that. Because it's never been something that I look at or put a value on. You know, I love doing the things that I do because I genuinely love doing it. You know, and one thing that stands out for me is like my art teacher that I had from grade 8 to grade 12. I think he's a big reason why I made a career out of my art, because I used to lunchtimes just down in the art room, like always making like pieces. We used to have like the best conversations. I'd come to him with an idea and he would never give me advice. He would just poke holes in my thought process. And I see now how valuable that is because it really taught me how to segment my thoughts and, you know, be my own worst and best critic in a lot of ways as well, and not just rest on my initial thing because I'm excited. I think the first one's a great idea. Might be a great idea, but it doesn't mean it's the best idea.
Yeah, and I resonate with that entirely in regards to, like, that's something that I share a lot with my clients is being your own best friend and the importance of that, because when you invest that time, energy, and money into yourself, you're then able to attract that and mirror that back into your external reality. So as you found, like, through your life, through your journey, you did mention that you did have, like, downs as well. So for those that are listening, especially with things that are happening at the moment in the world, and they're seeing you, Jack, and what you're doing and the impact that you're having on the planet and on the world, it's pretty amazing for someone your age. And I guess for those that are listening, what would be your advice for them who are potentially going through a challenging time, although have these ideas and are finding maybe some limiting beliefs are holding them back from taking action on that?
See, for me personally, I feel like I muted limiting beliefs through the acquisition of knowledge. But the other side of that coin is you can get addicted to learning, and because it's a positive way to procrastinate in a lot of ways as well. So the one thing that I kind of have been doing, especially like over the last 12 months, whenever I reach a roadblock or whenever I'm like overwhelmed in the sense of like maybe I have too many options, maybe I have too little options, maybe the option that I had put all my chips on didn't actually pan out the way that I was envisioning, because that happens all the time. We're idealistic people, the most of us, especially if you're, on the entrepreneurial journey. There has to be some kind of like almost toxic positivity around just to make you stupid enough to want to take on the entrepreneurial journey. But basically one thing that I've done is just take a step back and work out the steps that are in front of you. So if you want to reverse engineer it, like I don't have a set way of doing it. It's just whatever, the way that I'm feeling, and I'll just talk you through a few different ways that I do it. But whatever way that I'm feeling I need to handle that, whatever situation's in front of me, I go about it like that. Now, I know some people have very strict ways on which they goal set or which they plan their day or anything like that. I'm very free form when it comes to things. And, like, I suppose some people might even call it inconsistent. But the thing is, like, the way that I operate, I love the new. I can't get caught in routine, because as soon as I get caught in routine, that's when I start to lose interest in some ways. So one thing that I do, and I even did it this morning, I've been making it like a weekly practice, is to make sure that I'm actually on track and moving forward and not just fulfilling tasks. I work out, all right, what are the milestones that I'm working towards? So I'll give you one example. Right now, I'm working towards getting a new warehouse so that I can set up space for the podcast, the brand, and do like third-party fulfillment, all that kind of stuff. So in order for me to make sure that how I'm spending every day is actually taking me in the direction of that podcast and not just fulfilling tasks, I had to reverse engineer, all right, what financial level do I have to be hitting every single week in order for me to be able to afford that new place? Okay, once I figured out that, what do I have to be doing to hit that financial goals? Do I need to be doing X amount of photo shoots a week? Do I need to be running and spending X amount of dollars on Facebook ads with an X amount return? Just getting really granular on the steps, because then what you do when you work your way all the way back, it starts with okay, maybe I just need to run a Facebook ad with this target today, and then tomorrow I will communicate to X person about whatever it is that you're working on. But when you work your way back from your goals, it allows you to just take the first step rather than seeing the goal and just going, oh, fuck, that's too much work. I'm going to get my phone out and scroll for a minute. And another thing that I do as well, and this is more so on the offensive front. So when I do what I just described, that's more so when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I need clarity in my actions. This is more on the offensive front, in the sense of I do this every morning to set my brain on the frequency of my goals, basically. So I just get a blank piece of paper, and I call these the moonshot visions. I just write just huge goals, but whatever comes to mind. It doesn't matter if I wrote it yesterday. It doesn't matter if I wrote it a week ago. Doesn't matter if it's something I've never thought of before. If it's come into my mind, I just I take out my consciousness and just connect my mind to the pencil, basically, and just see what comes out. Because the one thing that I've found in that operation is I might uncover new values or new goals or things that I'm not consciously striving for, but my internal self wants to achieve, and I keep them all saved, but it's not a matter of me like looking back on it and, keeping track of those goals, because the whole idea of that operation is just to wake up, put everything in perspective. Like, one thing that I've been writing for the last year is Anarchy is $1 billion community. This is right at the top. Anarchy is $1 billion community, world famous for perspective shifting events, products, and content. And as soon as I write that, I get like a shiver up my spine. And like, no matter what happens to me that day, if I get, a bad review or someone comments something stupid on one of our posts, I'm like, who gives a fuck? I'm a $1 billion community. Like, what is that going to do to me? Yeah. So it really like puts in perspective where you're heading, so that you don't get caught up in the day-to-day and the mundane and all that kind of stuff. So 2 very, very valuable thought exercises that I do on a very regular basis that help me keep on task.
And it's like you're already being who you want to be. Yeah. And so therefore, resonating with the frequency with that of which you want. It's something that I really drive home on my social media and with my clients. So that's really cool that you mentioned that here today. And so for what purpose are you striving towards having $1 billion Anarchy community? Like, you mentioned that you're wanting to provide the space and resources to assist others in their journey. Why?
Creativity is beautiful. I feel like when you're being creative, you're your most genuine version of yourself, because creativity doesn't work if you're trying to play a role, because that's the thing. Like, throughout this journey as well, I didn't have to go about it this way, but I did it off my own back. I had this weird thing about asking people for help. I just didn't think I needed help. And I went about shit the hardest way possible. And it was like lonely as fuck. Especially after I left school, I just went full hermit mode for 3 years, didn't socialize, and I started telling myself I was an introvert because whenever I would enter back into social settings, I was like, fuck, what do people look like again? You know, so one thing I want to create is basically, like I think I've even said this to you before, like I'm creating this for myself 5 years ago. I would have loved a space where I could come in, you know, obviously still be productive, but have all the resources around me in terms of, you know, a marketing company, a photography studio, a podcast studio, you know, item fulfillment for my brand or whatever product I want to sell, like, and then also be surrounded by people that are not only, you know, on the same wavelength as me in terms of consciousness and drive, but they also have different skills, like, you know, meeting. If you've got a brand, you're an entrepreneur or something, you've got friends that are in video, or you've got friends that are wanting to become Facebook advertisers, and you build that network and you all kind of grow from the ground up together. That is where superpowers are born. You know, that's where all these behemoth companies start from, because everyone has just so happened to link up at the start of their journeys. They all have accenting skill sets. They all have matching drive and ambition, and they all bounce off each other to build these empires. And that's like basically I'm wanting to create space for those kind of uncanny connections to happen. And because that lights me up. Like if I can guarantee it, I can see it right now because I visualize it constantly.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Like I would probably get no work done there because I would just be on the floor constantly talking to everyone. Like someone's starting a brand, I'd probably spend all day with young Jimmy helping him put together his collection or whatever. And then my manager would be like, "Fuck, Jack, you didn't do any of your own work today." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I had a great conversation with Jimmy," you know, like so. Yeah, it's that environment that I'm really looking forward to, and obviously having those resources at hand makes for a very, very powerful brand of my own as well.
Yeah, wow. I honestly, when you speak into that vision of yours, I can see that for you, which is really exciting. And so what's the next step for you from here?
So the next step for me, that is a great question. That's one that I'm trying to figure out because I'm kind of getting ripped in different directions at the moment. Starting the podcast 6 months ago, it was, I wouldn't say it was an accident, but it was something that happened all of a sudden. I almost didn't give myself a chance to think about it. So I was with my past girlfriend for 7 years, and we decided to go our separate ways civilly, and I kind of had a bit of I think to myself, like, so, you know, we broke up on the Wednesday officially, and then I was just sitting by myself that night. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to have so much more time. What am I going to do with it? So I'm not one to, like, dwell, and, like, I get called unemotional because I don't kind of attach myself to shit, but at the same time as well, like, I'm not burying stuff. I just don't attach myself to outside emotions. But anyway, story for another episode. So we broke up on like the Wednesday, and I was chatting to myself. I was like, okay, well, what's something that, you know, I've kind of been thinking about for a while? Okay, what about a podcast? So then that night I wrote down a bunch of names and then designed the logo. That's just, it's my first thing. I always design the logo. I just make it real. And I know lots of people say logo's not important, but to me, I like to make shit real because then I have the idea, and like the logo fully embodies my vision all the time, basically. So I created the logo, created all the cover art, went on to Anchor FM, created like a page, did all that stuff. I did that thing that I told you guys to do earlier, which is Google, how the fuck do I start a podcast? And I found all my answers within seconds. So I did all that stuff, called up, booked the studio, and then that Friday I was in there, recorded the first episode, and we've been releasing at least one episode a week since that. So it just happened quickly. I didn't allow myself a chance to really think it out. I didn't have a plan for what the podcast format was going to be. I just wanted to meet interesting people and have meaningful conversations. Because one of the things that I also, one of the things that I kind of dealt with early on, and this is, I feel like, part of the reason why I did a lot of the journey by myself, is because I didn't want to be the guy that messaged people and say, hey, can I pick your brain? You know, because especially now when that happens back to me, and maybe this is just a projection of my former self, I don't like it when people do that. I love it when people say, hey, I admire what you're doing. Can I buy you a coffee and have a chat? Love that. But something about when people ask me to pick my brain, I feel like roadkill. So, I never really wanted to bother anybody. So the reason why a big reason why I started the podcast is it was a mutually beneficial way for me to say, come on the podcast, let's have an interesting chat because I want to learn from you, and let me provide you with an audience as well. So it allows me to mutually benefit the person I'm learning from. And that's what it is. Like, my podcast is me genuinely learning from my guests.
Yeah. And you've had some really cool guests on there, including me. Yeah. But who
coolest.
Course. Of course. Yeah. But who else have you had on that you never really thought that would come onto your podcast, if that makes sense?
Well, never really would have thought. Everyone's going to come on my podcast.
Of course, but as in, you may have been hesitant to message them at the start.
I'll give you one example, and this is just pure stupidity when you think about it. So there's this one guy, his name's Edward Maradona. He's from Perth. He owns a streetwear brand and luxury store called Cabernet Noir. They're right next to Gucci and Fendi and Louis Vuitton and all that stuff in the center of Perth. So I admire him a lot. He's an Australian champion hip hop dancer, really cool, covered in tats, just the coolest fucking style ever.
Yeah,
I've been following his journey for ages, and then I've had him. So when I put together the podcast, I built out a dream list, right, of people that I want to get on and stuff like that, and I'm slowly working my way through it. But then I was looking at it one day after I did one of my reconfiguration sessions where I make sure I'm actually working towards the goals and not just spinning on a treadmill. I was like, fuck, I've never once messaged this dude. And why? Why have I not reached out to him once? Is he going to come to me and just say, hey, I want to be on your podcast out of nowhere? That's never the case. So I just sent him a message. And I've gotten a lot better at messaging guests, but I'll finish this train of thought first. How's it sound?
We're just sitting on the canals, and before Jack mentioned that there's swans that come past and visit, and they're just coming past now, which is really cool.
Yeah, so I sent him a quick Instagram message, and literally within 5 minutes he sends back, cool man, love to do it. And we set up a time, and I interviewed him about a week and a half ago, and just absolutely gobsmacked by his take in the fashion industry. I love fashion, but I'm not a fashion guy, you know what I mean? I love what fashion can do, and I love the idea. I take a lot of pride in my work, and I love how fashion can make people feel, and clothes are a big indicator to the emotion that someone's experiencing, as well as the emotions of a particular time period. And fashions are an external expression, basically.
Yeah, of course.
So, but I'm not someone who's obsessed with fashion. I'm obsessed with personal development. But he was obsessed with fashion, can rattle off the designers, what certain styles mean and how they're related to, periods of time and, what that actually meant back in that period of time, why people roll their jeans up. It was actually to get it out of the chains of when they used to ride bikes back in New York and, all that kind of stuff and what it means, certain hip-hop styles and how music has affected fashion, and just so articulate in that whole realm. And I was sitting there listening to him, and I was like, I really admire it, because that's someone that has I admire people that have committed to a particular field and just become experts at it. Because I've always had I suppose you could call it a version of shiny object syndrome, but I look at it as the fact is I have lots of interest, and I put my 100% effort into all of them. But what could I achieve if I maybe just limited myself to going all in on one interest? I think about that a lot. But Gary Vee talks about the same kind of thing, because he's one who's got lots of different business ventures, and they're all doing quite well, at least the ones you see anyway. And he talks about the idea of not limiting yourself, because if you're someone that's ADHD like myself, I need different things to put my brain energy towards that suits the frequency that I'm running at that given time. I love podcasting, for instance. before, I'll be honest, I was feeling a little bit flat. My brain was fried. And then yet the mics come on. You've asked me a few questions and now it's hard pressed getting me to shut up. So I need something like this to like really lift my frequency. And then sometimes as well, I want to sit down and I want to play the drums. I want to hit shit really, really hard. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that, it's completely irrelevant from podcasting and fashion, but it's just another thing that fills up my cup. You know, that I need that kind of expression. And designing fashion, like I'm in a completely different mood when I'm sitting down and designing a collection or when I'm running Facebook ads. They're all different versions of Jack, and I need them all to make me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It's like embodying different archetypes for who you need to show up as for that day to get whatever it is you need to do done. Yeah. And I really like how you mentioned like playing your music as well, because some of us can get really caught up in that motivational, like, get shit done, like, this is what you got to do, that here's your routine list, like, especially with 75 Hard. It's great, and also like so much structure. We can get lost in doing the things because we have to do them. And when we are wanting to elevate our frequency to that of which what we want, like that $1 billion business, right? When we are elevating our frequency, sometimes it's actually okay to do things that are just fun. And for me, like, whether I just go to the beach or go read a book, and even I had to let go of feeling unproductive, that I wasn't getting things done, because at the end of the day, by taking that like energy and investing it into myself, that time into me and what lights me up, like you said as well, what lights you up, then you actually will find that you attract what you want a lot easier, because you've taken that time to elevate your mood, which is really cool that you said music. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you are obsessed with personal development. When did you start getting on the journey of like personal development? When did you start cultivating that awareness of self? And what have been your greatest lessons learning so far?
So, I'll take it back. I'm very, very lucky in the sense that my mum got us making vision boards and stuff like that from when I was really young. So cool. I've always understood that we can bring about and manifest whatever we want in life. And in retrospect, I've enjoyed this because I'm actually looking back in my life. I don't often get to be on the other side of the microphone. So I'm looking back at my life, I've actually realized I feel like that's what kind of gave me the confidence to, I don't know, take the plunge and make the decision that I'm going to be self-employed my entire life. Because everything is possible. It sounds corny as fuck. Absolutely everything is possible, because the very fact that you can imagine it means you've already made it possible within your mind.
Yes. Like I'm sitting here with like the biggest grin on my face, because that's literally everything that I teach. Continue.
Yes. So that started from when I was very young, and basically I was a self-driven personal development person until I left school. I wasn't a reader. I hadn't finished an entire book until I left school. I watched YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff, but it was mainly just my own self-talk that was developed. Like I made a conscious effort I spent lots of time by myself. I feel like that's really important for personal development, because oftentimes we can, numb our own inner voice because it is stressful to, try and figure shit out within yourself. We numb it, even if we're numbing it with productive things like audiobooks or podcasts, we're still numbing ourselves and taking away that opportunity to break down and analyze maybe certain things that we're not giving ourselves on a spiritual level, certain energetic things we're not feeding ourselves, maybe certain situations that are pulling us away from our journey, because we all know what we want to do. It's just a matter of getting clear on what that actually is. And that's where we get this emotional dissonance. It's like, I'm not doing what I want to be doing, but what the fuck do I want to do? And that's like a really hard question. So a lot of people, including myself, dull that down because it's a hard conversation. It uses a lot of brain power to have that conversation with yourself. So a lot of my personal development just came from me spending time within my own mind. And then when I left school, and after a little while, probably about 2 years after leaving school, I decided to move to Sydney. And then when I moved to Sydney, I looked at it as a chance to rebuild myself in the image of who I wanted to be. And I talk about this a lot in one of my episodes with Ariana Whittingham. When you stay in your hometown, or especially if you're living at home or something, whether the external environment is doing this to you or you're doing it to yourself, most of the time it's a collaboration of both. We stay inside the box of our past selves because our family knows us to be a certain way. We know ourselves to be a certain way within that environment. So then we subconsciously stay the same. So when I moved to Sydney, I used it as an opportunity to recreate myself. So I started reading. I made a conscious effort to read a book a month while I was down there. That habit has stuck, and then some. I also started microdosing magic mushrooms or psilocybin, and then I made a conscious effort as well to socialize. You know, and the one thing that I've had to do is, because I'm still getting over this, but I don't like doing things without just for the sake of them. Like, I've never been one to just hang out and chill. You know, that word isn't really in my vocabulary, but I'll hang out and brainstorm business ideas. To me, that's fun as fuck.
Yeah.
You know, I'll hang out and do a workout, and like, that's why the Brotherhood's been so great, because it allows me to tick my productivity box and my social box in one activity.
Yeah.
You know, I can't just sit there and hang out. You know, it's not, I get uncomfortable doing that, funny enough. So I made a conscious effort to socialize, and that's what allowed me to get the clients that I did down in Sydney, because I went down there and I rebooted the marketing agency. Obviously, I was running Anarchy on the side as well, but the marketing agency was like my main bread and butter while I was down there. And by socializing, I ended up getting to become friends with a lot of the club owners in Double Bay and Bondi and in the city and stuff like that. And so then that worked my way up into doing promotion and like advertising for the clubs, which got me into like although sometimes toxic circle, a very influential circle, and being in the fashion scene and kind of being surrounded by Sydney's a very transient place, especially in the modelling industry. Lots of people internationally come and go, so I got a chance to meet some influential people in the fashion scene. In my short 3 years there, I made some great connections, and that all stemmed from me, number one, boosting my knowledge and taking my already strong internal belief and putting it towards tangible thought patterns. Like when you read a book, you're downloading someone's frame of thinking. You know, you're downloading their experience, something that they've read, you know, spent 10, 20, 30 years accumulating, and dialed it down into a book that you can digest. And then the psilocybin really helped me get a grip on my emotions. One thing, like I briefly touched on earlier, because I went hermit mode after school and didn't see anyone, I was a very monotone human being. I wasn't overly ecstatic or happy about anything, and I never got upset about anything. I was just flat. So when I started microdosing, I went through about a 3-week roller coaster of like PMS almost. And after that, my spectrum of emotion has gotten a lot broader, and my ability to control that as well has gotten a lot stronger. But yeah, it's the reading thing for me that was life-changing. That and I read a book called The Alter Ego Effect, and this really helped me with socializing, because especially early on moving to Sydney, like I used to take myself on walks on a night out just to have some alone time, because like it takes a lot of energy for me to socialize and do all that kind of stuff, especially if like the conversations are surface level. Like it's so hard for me to have a surface level conversation, just like, you know, you're probably the same. So I used to take myself on walks and psych myself up, and I'm like, I'm going to go back in there, I'm going to be the life of the party. You know, I'm going to go back in there, I'm going to talk to everyone, I'm going to have meaningful conversations. And then like after doing that and putting myself in the shoes of someone who does that and acts like that, I was able to go on and do it. But what the alter ego effect taught me is a conscious framework to how to build a secondary identity, so to speak. And this doesn't have to be, don't view it in the way of like, oh, you know, you're not being authentic. View it in the way as like, you have all the traits you want. All all it is a matter of you believing that you can fulfill them, basically. So by separating and creating another identity separate from the way that you walk around, who you walk around as every day, almost keeps my everyday Jack safe. I can step into the shoes of, Party Jack or whatever. I didn't have a name for him, but I could step into the shoes of Party Jack and, everyday Jack would be safe. So that allowed me to be charismatic, allowed me to be the first person to initiate conversation, allowed me to ask for things that I wanted, allowed me to go to business opportunities that were out of my league. Well, so my everyday Jack would have framed it that way, right? Because that regardless of what happened, as when I was Party Jack, my everyday Jack would be safe because I can just take off that costume and, go about my day, so to speak.
Yeah, and when you speak into that about everyday Jack being safe, what specifically do you mean?
I think it comes down to rejection. Everyone is afraid of rejection to a certain degree. Some people have more control over that, but it's an innate fear that we have as human beings. So I think rejection is a thing that stops people from lots of areas in their life, whether it's, approaching a girl or a guy that you like, whether it's, me before reaching out to that podcast guest that I had on my list. It was just, even though I'm not physically harmed by someone saying no, still we avoid rejection at all costs. So I think that's what I was protecting myself from.
And just to reframe as well for those that are listening. So if you are someone that is wanting to take action on creating their own business or reaching out to someone like a date, for example, all that kind of stuff, and you may have felt that fear, those limiting beliefs come up within you, this is something that I have also spoken into, is like a method that I use with my clients called acting as if. And this really resembles what you're saying. Is I remember I used to be really insecure about the way I looked. And I remember rocking up to Burleigh Beach, and this is when I first moved to the Gold Coast. And it was the middle of winter for Melbourne, so definitely wasn't as lean as I would usually get for summer. And for me, I had attached that belief that I only looked good when I was lean. So for me to not be lean in Burleigh, walking in the beach, in my bikini, I was feeling really nervous. I was hunched over. I was looking at the ground, and I just felt awful. And then this thought, I'm pretty sure from my higher self, just come in and slap me in the face. And it was okay, what would confident Elise do? And it's like what you were saying about Party Jack. What would the best version of myself do right now? Who do I want to be, and what would they do in this situation? How would they stand? How would they speak? How would they approach people? And straight away, my eyes went up, my shoulders were back, my chest was up, I started walking like a normal person, and my confidence switched just like that. And I guess just to elaborate on what you were saying about keeping that part of you safe, it's almost your inner child within you having those little fears or limiting beliefs coming up. Oh, what if worst case scenario? And then it's you as your highest self stepping in and being hey, younger Elise, it's all good, or younger Jack, I got you. And then going in and going after what you want. Does that resonate?
Makes sense. Yeah, definitely. It makes perfect sense. And for anyone who's wanting a step-by-step on how you can kind of build out this, I suppose, as if persona, I definitely recommend the Alter Ego Effect. Very, very powerful book, and just allows you to really think it through, because a lot of the times we know what the answers are, or the answers can be boiled down to a single sentence, but that doesn't necessarily mean we understand how to action these answers. So yeah, that's why books have been so life-changing for me. And I definitely feel like starting to read was a fork in the road of my journey.
And for me, Jack, I personally believe that we are spirit living a human experience. And you've spoken a lot about books and your journey, and my question to you is, if your soul's journey was a book, what would it be called? And what has been the breadcrumbs that have led you to this point in time?
Okay, so it would be called What Are You Waiting For?
Ooh, I like it.
And the breadcrumbs that have led me to this point it all boils down to unshakable belief that it is going to happen. Whatever I am viewing or looking or working towards, it is going to happen. And if you set up the foundation of that unshakable belief, then you're not clouded by doubt whenever you're making these actions. You can act and you can enjoy the journey. That's the important part as well, because destinations are useless if you hated the road getting there, and that's why we have unfulfillment. Because one thing we find is our destinations are never what they're perceived as in our mind. But the journey, for instance, like me sitting here looking over this beautiful lake as the sun sets,
Gorgeous.
We're both well dressed, we're having a very meaningful conversation. Like, this is the journey. This is what's made it all worth it. So theoretically, this is not going to happen, but theoretically, I never make it to the made it, quote unquote, point. Regardless, I've lived a big and fulfilled life, so, and that's been possible because I'm so certain that every goal I set in place is, number one, possible, and number two, I have achieved it. Yeah.
And for those that are listening, as your absolute belief and certainty in yourself is incredible. However, some people listening may not have that belief within themselves. So I guess what I'm asking of you, Jack, is what would be your advice for these people who struggle with believing in themselves?
Find out why you want to believe in yourself. Why should you believe in yourself? That's as simple as that. And use this reverse engineer process. Figure out what it is that you will get out of believing in yourself. So say, for instance, the goal setting one and the moonshot vision one is so valuable because if you're writing down things that, even if you're writing it down and you're thinking to yourself, no, there's no way I'm ever going to attain this. And then yet you backtrack from that process. And then as you microanalyze these big goals and you realize that, hey, maybe that $1 billion business just starts with me releasing a clothing line. And then, maybe that $1 billion business or that $1 million business, or maybe me asking that girl on a date that I've been drooling over for 4 years. Maybe the first step is just messaging her on Instagram, or even let's not get too hasty. Let's just reply an emoticon back to one of her stories, right?
Yeah.
When you get granular on it, it's that's how you build belief. You build belief through repetition. I can't give you an answer on how to believe in yourself because no one can do that for you but you. But if you avoid the actions that will build belief, you're never going to get there, and then that's a compounding effect that, your mind just goes, oh, see, I'm stupid anyway, I'm an idiot anyway, but in actual fact, we're putting ourselves down before even getting the opportunity to try it or test that belief. So I would say figure out why you want to believe in yourself in the first place, because everything stems from a why. Everything is attached to an emotion which is driven, into action, basically. So figure out why it is you want to believe in yourself.
Oh, I love that answer. I actually recently recorded a podcast on why gratitude is a must-have daily practice. And it very much so relates into what you're saying, because what you're speaking about is rewiring the reticular activating system in your brain to search for positive reasons why you should believe in yourself. Because like I spoke to on your podcast, it's really easy to get in the habit of saying things that we hate about ourselves or we really dislike or we could be doing better. And when we have a belief, our unconscious mind then searches our experience to support that bias, to search for evidence to support our original belief. So if you believe that you're not worth believing in yourself, then you're going to search for reasons why unconsciously. However, if you change that with a simple reframe, like you said, why should you believe in yourself? Then your brain is going to then search for those answers of why you should, which is really cool. I love that so much. And I guess as we start to wrap up, Jack, for the listeners, I want you to just channel in or feel into a message and it doesn't have to be relevant to what we've spoken about previously. However, a piece of advice or something really powerful that has come to you that you've learned over your time that you think needs to be heard by the listeners today.
I keep coming back to what are you waiting for? Because these are the conversations that I have the most. And like I was saying earlier on, I really get a huge kick out of helping people. And just talking people through, ways of thinking. Like I'm not huge on giving advice, but I love helping people, get through their own frame of thinking. And it always just comes down to, what are you waiting for? We discredit ourselves before taking a single step. So whatever it is, and like a friend of mine I recently met, Oliver, he's comes down to brotherhood. He and I have had this conversation lots of time, and one thing that I've noticed he started doing is, like, we'll be walking and chatting, and all of a sudden he just disappears. And because he's just gone to go get the number of, like, some girl, because that's just something that he's wanting to work through. And that's come from him, like, before he even gets a chance to think about what to say, he makes the decision in his mind, all right, I'm going to go talk to that person. And because he doesn't allow himself to talk himself out of it, he doesn't allow his brain to, rationalize the situation and say, oh, you don't need to go talk to that girl. Like, you're fine at the moment. But because it's something that he's told himself he wants to do, he's used the method of what are you waiting for and just acted upon it. And if you take that kind of thought process and put it into absolutely everything and don't wait, just dive in head first, like that is so ridiculously beneficial, because all my failures have come through procrastination and hesitation, because opportunities are only around for a short amount of time.
Wow, so powerful. And for the listeners, where can they find you if they want to get in contact with you and reach out, especially with regards to this podcast? So
I am Jack William on Instagram. I basically only use Instagram, and you'll find the links to the podcast and the brand in my bio. So that's Before the Money is the podcast, Anarchy Label is the brand. Go and check them all out. If you resonate with my stuff, if you like the podcast, follow. If you listen to the podcast, let me know, because I love having these kind of conversations with people. I love knowing that what the effort that we're putting in is providing value, as I'm sure you do too, Elise. So yeah, just come say hello, send me a message as well. Don't ask to pick my brain, please. But if you want to ask me a question, I love answering questions, but my brain is not to be picked.
And I also was on Jack's podcast Before the Money as well. We did an interview together that did really well, actually. So
it's done well.
Yeah, if you're wanting to hear more of Jack and I, head over to his podcast and check it out. But thank you so much
Can I ask you a question before we wrap up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I want to turn the spotlight back to the hostess over here. So obviously you've got a few podcast episodes in the bag, all right? And coming from someone who's also got a podcast, what have you found about going through the podcasting process that has taught you the most, whether in a personal growth or an intellectual way of development? What's been your biggest growth-provoking part of the podcast so far?
Okay. That I can do anything. That I can do anything that I set my mind to, because there is this absolute fire in my heart that will, I will stop at nothing to get what I want and create what I want. Like the influence and impact that I want to have on the community, to be able to empower those that are listening, whoever I come into contact with day to day, whether it be just on my walk and smiling at a stranger down the street. Like if I can help someone be the mirror to reflect back to others the love and the power that each and every single person that's listening or I come into contact with has within them, like imagine the ripple effect on the globe that would have. Like nothing will stop me from pursuing that mission. Like I just like I said before, had this absolute fire in my heart. And this podcast has been something I've wanted to create for so long. And now that it's actually come to fruition, it's like, okay, I can do this. And like, I'm ready. I'm so ready. And yeah, it's just an absolute honor to be living my life and be the creator of this experience. It's magical.
Fantastic.
Good answer?
Yeah, I'll take it.
I'm happy with it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jack. And yeah, we'll definitely be having you back on very soon. Much love. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Peace. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.